And they have their calorie consumption just in training can be upwards of 12 to 15,000 calories a day. And if you're running that far every day, how much food intake and liquid intake are you actually having to do?
It's such a weird thing. I didn't track it for the PCT, which I wish I did, but for the Appalachian Trail, which I averaged 50 miles a day carrying a backpack. So I was carrying, I don't know if you can do the conversion to stones or to metric, but it was like my base weight was like 7 pounds, but my pack weight would range between like 15 and 28 pounds. So I was averaging 50 miles a day on the Appalachian Trail, and I was eating, starting out, probably 8,000 or 9,000 calories a day. And when I was finishing, I was eating around 12,000 calories a day, and I wasn't getting enough food. I was, definitely had lost weight, looked really like gaunt is the word that people describe me. My wife was kind of, like, yeah, you look horrible. She shot me straight. I just looked like this skeleton.
I actually, I had a girlfriend when I was younger split up with me. I did a 200-kilometer kayak race. So it was 130 something miles. And you get on at the start and you get off at the end, and there's not a lot stopping in between. And, we measured, we burnt about 16,500 calories during the race. And
wow.
You can't replace that if you don't stop. It's impossible to push your body that hard and consume calories at the same time. And I actually found that afterwards I was shaking. It was quite a mess afterwards. But McDonald's, I hate McDonald's, but McDonald's was the only way I could actually go and get enough calories in my face one sitting to start to replace some of that deficit. Because healthy, like pasta and chicken, you have to eat a lot of pasta and chicken to go and get those.
But how many Big Macs were you eating is the real question.
So the ironic thing is you don't have to eat that much. You have to, in the UK, you have to eat 12 Big Mac meals to replace 16,000 calories.
That's all?
That's all. That's it.
Like a Big Mac every hour for half the day, and you're done. Check.
That's it. 16,000 calories done. What's the swimmer Michael Phelps? The multiple Olympian, got all the medals guy.
Of course.
He's notorious when he's training, or was training because he's retired now, of only ever eating fast food because he couldn't get enough calories in. He just spent the whole day eating healthy food, so he ate fast food. It's crazy.
It is crazy. Well, one thing that is always a funny comparison that makes running interesting is it's a much more like strenuous, and it has a lot more impact on the body than something like swimming and kayaking, which is interesting, right? Because like I've done a few calculations, and I'm 90%, 16,000 calories. I wasn't burning that much in a day. And it's interesting to think of, the max effort of a kayaker and the max caloric burn of a kayaker versus a runner. And a big part of it, if I was hitting on the Appalachian Trail, if I was hitting more than, I generally average around like 14 or 15 hours a day of moving time. If I bump that up to like 17 hours of moving time, I'd get some kind of like muscle or tendon or musculoskeletal injury while out there, which as a swimmer or as a kayaker, I'm not well versed in those disciplines, but my understanding of it is, it's more like the more the merrier. You can pile it on as much as you can, and minimize sleep in a way that your body can just handle that kind of volume. But it comes down to like caloric intake in a different way that it does for runners.
Yeah, I mean, speaking as somebody who's paddled very long distances in kayaks, you use chains of very small groups of muscles when you're kayaking. You don't get much access to your large muscle groups, so you're propelling yourself using all your small muscles, really. Whereas hiking, backpacking, running, you obviously get use of your quads, your thighs, you get all those big glutes, all those big muscles that you actually can go use. And I think that's probably one of the biggest differences is muscle usage and how it gets used. How did you How did you manage that without buggering your body up? Excuse the language, because it's a big strain.
I did, is the best part. So I could go, I have like there's a million and one different things that pop up on something like this. Like I have 2 cigar-sized scars on the back of my back where my pack in different trips is rubbed and had a mild infection. I think I have remarkably only lost 1 toenail, which probably is the best fun fact of this whole conversation. I've never actually verbalized that. It's like just hit me right now. You think over, we're talking about 6,000 miles of trail and I lost 1 toenail. I had the more important or bigger injuries are all like tendon, mostly tendon related. Like when I started out the PCT, I felt like a niggle on my Achilles the day before and thought that's weird. And then on day 2, I was like, yeah, I have Achilles tendonitis that I just kind of battled through for about 8 days before it went away. And that was like miserable. It was mostly fine when I was running, but when I'd stand up or sit down, that movement, and when it got stiff, I could feel the creaking of my Achilles. But that went away with time. I'd have a bunch of things like the worst thing on the AT that popped up was my mostly my right quad. The lower part of my quad muscle would balloon up, and I'd kind of like lose mobility in it, mostly due to micro tears in my muscle. That's what at least a doctor and I hypothesized. And so my knee would swell up. I couldn't run on it. If I ran on it, it hurt, and I didn't really have great mobility, but I had to keep making miles. So instead of, running the 52 or 55 miles that I had been doing, I would just walk, and I, would walk for 15 hours, 16 hours, cover 40, 44 miles, maybe if I was lucky. And then over the course of about a day and a half to 2 days, my body would recover from that. I'd slowly start to be able to bend it a bit more because I, was mostly walking hobbled, and then I was able to bend it more. Once I got a little mobility into it, I did some light running, and after about 2.5 days, I'd be pretty much fully back. Although, towards the end of it, my average, this was part due to the terrain because the very northern half of the AT is very challenging, but also part due to kind of body deterioration, maybe is the best way to think about it, is I was just covering less ground. I can talk your head off, Rob, so apologies. I don't go on a small tangent here, but the best indicator of that, right? Like I would wear shoes. I would try to, switch out my shoes every 300 to 500 miles. So the first 5 pairs of shoes, I made it through, 1,500 miles. Every pair of shoe I threw away, I was like, man, this feels really bad. Like the outsole is still pretty pristine because I'd worn it for 6-7 days. When I got to that northern section, my gait had changed so significantly that the last pair of shoes I got about 150 or 200 miles out from the finish, and that bottom of that shoe looked like it had been, just scraped against a rock constantly, and it was in much worse condition, only having like 150 miles on it than the shoes that I had worn earlier because I was dragging my feet because my gait had changed over time.
Jeepers.